So in the scope of this program, we have we already had several publications on the topics, which, by the way, will be addressed today, both in English and in Uzbek, because again, it's very important for us that this program interacts with Uzbekistani decision makers. We're going to have more publications in May, so please follow us. This program also enables us to invite for 3 months 5 Uzbekistani young scholars, so that they could conduct their own research on their topics here. They got some training, so they were attending classes, including on writing policy brief, on presenting, and also it was a wonderful opportunity for them to do some networking here, to meet with all DC and beyond DC expert community. I'm not going to talk too much about this program. You can find all the information on our website, centralasiaprogram.org. But what I would like to say is that this program is very important to us because we all know that Uzbekistan is at a critical juncture now in its development trajectory. Since President Shavkat Mirziyoyev was elected president after President Karimov passed away, Uzbekistan has been navigating what might be described as a phase of strong economic transformation. A transformation that moves beyond initial liberalization toward deeper structural and institutional change. But all these changes require not only maintaining momentum, but also consolidating the gains. So for policymakers and practitioners, this raises a lot of questions, a series of actually interrelated questions. For example, how can Uzbekistan sustain growth while avoiding the common pitfalls of transition economies? For example, uneven development, or regulatory uncertainty, or governance gaps. How can Uzbekistan strengthen state capacity while continuing to liberalize? How can it ensure that economic transformation translates into broad-basement improvements in welfare rather than reinforcing existing inequalities? These questions, of course, are not specific to Uzbekistan, but the country's specific context gives them particular relevance. One defining feature is, I think, its demographic trajectory. Uzbekistan's young and rapidly growing population represents, of course, a significant potential asset. If effectively integrated into the economy, this demographic dynamic could become a powerful driver of growth and of innovation. But if job creation, skills development, and social mobility do not keep pace, it would also generate pressures. Economic, social, and even political. This is why the link between economic reform and human capital development is so central to today's discussion in Uzbekistan, but it will be central in our symposium today. Investments in education, in vocational training, and skills are not simply social policies, they are core components of an economic strategy aimed at enhancing productivity and competitiveness in a changing, evolving global environment. At the same time, Uzbekistan's increasing integration into regional and global systems introduces both opportunities and, again, constraints. Connectivity initiatives, shifting trade patterns, and the broader geopolitical context are shaping the external environment in which reforms unfold. Navigating this landscape requires a careful balancing act that means leveraging openness while managing exposure to external threats, to external shocks, sorry. Another critical dimension is inclusion. economic reform processes often produce winners, but they also produce losers, at least in the short term. So ensuring that the benefits of growth are widely shared is essential, not only from a social perspective, but also for the political sustainability of reform. So this includes, in particular, advancing women's economic participation and addressing barriers to access, whether in credit or in employment or in entrepreneurship. So in this regard, social protection systems also play a key role. As labor markets evolve and migration patterns shift, the ability of the state to provide targeted, efficient, and adaptive social support becomes an integral part of the broader reform architecture. So our program on Uzbekistan and the 4 panels we're going to have today will reflect all these interdependencies. I would also like to highlight an important point of today's symposium. You know, one of our key objectives was to ensure a strong presence of experts from Uzbekistan today. It was particularly important for us to bring as many Uzbekistani voices into the room as possible. We really wanted to hear directly from those who are observing and from those who are experiencing this reform on the ground, how they assess Uzbekistan's trajectory and what policy recommendations also they would like to put forward. For these reasons, each panel will include at least 2 speakers from Uzbekistan, as you probably saw on the agenda. And we believe also that this is especially valuable for DC community because many decision makers do not always have the opportunity to travel regularly to Uzbekistan and engage directly with local experts. And at the same time, of course, given the significant development of US-Uzbekistani relations over this past decade, we also thought it would be very important to include an American perspective in most panels. So we will have a US-based speaker in 3 panels today, who will not only provide their analysis of the issues under discussion, but also reflect on the nature and evolution of US engagement in all the sectors that we're going to talk about today. So last but not least, so I don't want to talk too long, but before moving to the first panel, I would like first to thank Mr. Komil Alamjonov in Ms. Nozima Davletova for making this program happen. I would also like to thank Ms. Andrea Trisiozzi for incredible and unwavering support in this design and implementation of this program. I don't know if she's here now, but I would really like to thank her. And of course, I mean, this is a teamwork, and I would like to thank all the Central Asia Program team, Mrs. Aitolkin Korkmanova, Ms. Eve Danishevsky, and Mr. Ravan Yusran for all their work for the Central Asia Program and for this Uzbekistan program. So now, I'm right on time, actually. We're going to move to our first panel on driving change in Uzbekistan markets, investors, and economic reform. I would say that this panel will be moderated by Ms. Nozima Davletova, who is the head of the Secretariat of the American Uzbek Business and Investment Council, where she leads the council's operation. Nozima also serves as consultant to the head of the Presidential Administration of the Republic of Uzbekistan and chief coordinator of the Project Office for Human Capital Development. Previously, she served as head of the Division for Information and Analytical Support of Foreign Policy and Expansion of Foreign Economic Cooperation with the Presidential Administration. And in this capacity, she contributed to shaping Uzbekistan's foreign relations agenda and continues to play an active role in the country's accession to the World Trade Organization. Her earlier leadership experience includes serving as chairwoman of the board of trustees of the Public Foundation for Support and Development of National Mass Media. In 2025, she was appointed chair of the Council of Women Entrepreneurs under the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, ensuring that women entrepreneurs' voices and priorities are represented at the highest levels of policy making. She also serves as chair of the supervisory board of Teach for Uzbekistan, part of the global Teach for All network, which works to expand access to quality education in rural areas. She and I would say, I want also to say that, and we're extremely proud of that, Nozima was is a former fellow with the Central Asia Program. So one more reason that we're so happy to have you with us today. Thank you so much. Nozima, the floor is yours, and I will let you introduce all the other speakers. Thank you very much.
Sebastien, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't know you were going to read the whole bio.
That was worth really, yeah?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm extremely happy to be here and to moderate this session. And so many familiar faces, and I love to be here because, as Sebastien kindly mentioned, I was part of this program, and this program gave me so much. And Scott is here. Thank you for being here. Actually, he was my teacher here on public speaking, and everything you're going to see today is his labor. So, well, when I was part of this, this university, this university gave me so much that the universities are supposed to give to people: networking, knowledge, and self-confidence. And the Washington, D.C. is a place where I'm always happy to be, because it has such a vibe. It has such an environment where people at least know where Uzbekistan is and Central Asia is. In many other places in the U.S., you don't really know where people can't recognize you and can't recognize your country and region, and they usually tend to say like, "Oh my God, is it a place where the conflicts are ongoing?" No, it's not. It's super stable. It's super safe. And coming back to the program, I was extremely happy to contribute to this program, to renewal of this program, and giving opportunity to younger generations to have the same opportunities as I had 7 years ago, one child ago, to be precise. And today, with Sebastien, we have been, picking up very carefully the topics for research, making it mutually beneficial for the region of Central Asia, for the program, for the university, and also for bilateral relationships with of the United States with Uzbekistan. And these issues and these topics where our great researchers have been writing their research is extremely important to navigate for the new Uzbekistan. And I see here the bios of our speakers today for this panel, for the first panel. Let me introduce them. It's Dostonbek Eshpulatov. He is an associate professor on economics at Gulistan State University. He holds a PhD in economics and specializes in financial behavior and stock market participation in transition economies. So these topics are, Uzbekistan, the new Uzbekistan, is so much obsessed with. Komronbek Utkurov is a finance professional specializing in the structuring and financing of industrial projects in Uzbekistan, and financing of industrial focus, with a special focus on critical minerals sector. This sphere the United States is now obsessed with. Drawing on a professional background in corporate banking, he works at the intersection of finance, industrial development, and economic reform. And Dr. Rudenshiold, if I'm correct for pronouncing, is the senior fellow for Caspian affairs and served under President Trump and Biden as National Security Council Director for Central Asia with a very deep knowledge in the region. Dear guests, ambassadors, thank you for being here, so let's get it started. And our first speaker is Dostonbek Eshpulatov, Associate Professor from Gulistan State University. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I will move there. Good morning. I am Dostonbek Eshpulatov from Gulistan State University. Today, I present my research on determinants of retail investor participation in Uzbekistan stock market. Over the next few minutes, we will explore exactly why our market remains disconnected, and more importantly, how we can transform passive savers into active investors. So, why must we talk about stock market? Because it is far more than just finance. For citizens, it builds wealth. For the state, mobilizes idle domestic capital. And for the business, provides cheaper capital. Yet, despite these undeniable benefits, our domestic market remains hidden under the pillow, completely bypassing the capital market. This stark paradox brings us to the core central research question: how can we activate retail investors in Uzbekistan capital market to overcome the deep-rooted barriers preventing mass public participation? Consider this: activating just a fraction of potential investor base could inject $180 million into our economy. The money is there. Is the market too expensive? No. Look at entry price. Single share of Aloqa Bank costs only 1 Uzbek sum. While 40% Kazakh citizens active investors in Uzbekistan, it's only 2.5%. The problem isn't lack of funds. It is a bridge that hasn't been built yet. So my central research answer speaks retail investor participation is primarily constrained by deep-rooted behavioral barriers, which are further intensified by persistent structural limitation in the market environment. Let's look at the 5 constraints. First, financial literacy. All people don't have enough financial literacy to invest in the stock market. Second, risk aversion. Fear of loss causes people to store cash. The religion is the Islamic finance concern keep 27% of citizens unbanked. Fourth, trust. Chronic lack of transparency makes people buy real assets instead. Finally, perceived benefit. Citizens don't use the market as a wealth-building tool. For financial literacy, have we discovered paradox? According to OECD metrics, our basic financial knowledge is actually high. We also have digital leapfrogging scenario. Nearly 88% of our citizens actively uses payment apps as Click and Pay Me, but this engagement is mostly transactional. While people comfortably transfer money and rely heavily on informal networks, formal wealth accumulation remains critically low, with bank deposits at just 80%. People know how to transfer money, but they lack advanced investment education. They have basic literacy, but no formal wealth building skills. While behavioral barriers keep people away, the system itself pushes them away. On paper, our market capitalization is impressive, but only 1% consists of freely traded stocks. Our market is fundamentally shallow. There are systematic barriers, state dominance and unpredictable prioritization pipeline, outdated trading and depository infrastructure, liquidity and limited financial instruments, protection of minority rights. In short, our current structural environment validates the public psychological fears. How do we fix this? We start with behavioral interventions. We must adjust financial literacy. First, the Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Innovation and other institutions must collaborate on developing training of trainers model, creating pedagogical materials and transfer them through professional development centers. Then we must integrate mandatory courses across all university majors, expand to colleges, and leverage digital gamification simulators. Our KPI mustn't be printed certificates, but active stock market accounts. To overcome behavioral barriers to retail market participation, I propose a nationwide after-enrollment policy. Employers should automatically open zero-fee brokerage accounts for all new employees through partnered brokers. Upon hiring, broker would provide finalized contract, investment guide, and tax incentive details. Consequently, partnered brokers receiving massive amount of inactive accounts are incentivized to conduct targeted outreach and free trainings. This transforms brokers into financial literacy agents, and directly mitigating information asymmetry. Crucially, contribution must remain strictly voluntary. Employees retain full autonomy over investment amount and timing, ensuring no financial burden on any party. Employers should be also incentivized through operational business sustainability rating platform by receiving points by state committee, tax committee. Next, we must address risk aversion. Education isn't enough if people fear of losing savings. At the micro level, trading apps must integrate risk calculator, robo-advising, portfolio management services inside their mobile banking apps. This will towards investors towards safe assets like cooperative and government bonds. At the macro level, we must introduce investment risk insurance practices and derivative instruments to hedge risk. If we want retail investors to take a leap, we must show them safety net. Our third intervention addresses the religious factor. Although 27% of our citizens unbanked because of religious reason, central bank data shows 30% still holds bank credits, active bank credits, and by the end of 2025, retail bank deposits had surged to just above $40 billion. This proves faith hasn't completely blocked financial participation. To especially bring this fight conscious segment into stock market, the solution is simple. Establish an official register of Sharia-compliant equities. Integrating this certified list directly into trading apps removes the psychological barrier and instantly unlocks a massive pool of new investors. Then institutional trust, particularly among demographics who fear large corporations will pocket profits. The recent Presidential Decree 74 is a game changer. it legally guarantees dividend payouts from state-owned enterprises. But we must broadcast these advantages through mass media and ensure unified market transparency inside trading apps. This transparency activates social proof. When one can see other earning returns, their distrust will melt away. Finally, let's talk about perceived benefit. When people see massive profit potential, fear disappears. Between 2006 and 2016 years, Ahmadboy Financial Pyramid attracted $32 million from 12,000 citizens. I remember one man even tried to invest his only donkey, but Ahmadboy refused it. But anyway, it proves high returns make people blind to risk. We can use this behavior. For this, I propose a stock market simulator integrated into payment apps, driving a powerful psychological trigger, fear of missing out. There will be risk-free environment where our investors could test their knowledge. Then our stock market offers 12% tax exemption, up to 29% of bond yields, and long-term passive income. But the public doesn't know that. We must strategically advertise as a high-yield benefit inside their mobile banking apps to increase people's attitude. People must feel opportunities they are losing. Imagine a user sees a message. If you invested here 1 million soon 2 years ago, there is exact tax-free profit today. Showing them exact money they missed breaks their psychological barrier, transitioning them from a virtual simulator to active, confident investors. Finally, what about foreign capital? During my fellowship, right here in Washington, D.C., I asked some USA experts if they would invest Uzbekistan stock market. Their answer, probably not. They had two main concerns. First, transparency. They cannot track long-term performance. For this, we could upgrade OpenInfo.uz platform with deep historical reporting data. And second, repatriation risk. They fear about withdrawing their profits. For this, we must optimize technical processes for non-residents through Visa or MasterCard. To attract foreign capital, we must speak their language, transparent history, and easy liquidity. But of course, psychology alone is not enough. To ensure seamless experience, we need 4 systematic reforms. First, we need a strict privatization schedule. By publishing timeline of upcoming IPOs well in advance, give retail investors the necessary time to prepare and allocate their capital. Second, 100 digital infrastructure, fully online processes from brokerage account opening to fund withdrawal. Crucially, including automated dividend collection through USSCD platform, which is currently working properly. Third, we must offer diversification via ATFs. Launching ATF based on currently Tashkent stock market index could provide a simple, low-risk tool for passive investing. Finally, we must mandate transparency by requiring independent board directors, public dividend policies, and rigorous financial disclosures. In conclusion, overcoming these behavioral constraints, we realize our President's vision of creating thousands of new owners and shareholders during upcoming IPOs of major state enterprises. Ultimately, it ensures long-term financial independence of our citizens, while simultaneously injecting liquidity into Uzbekistan real economy. Thank you for attention.
Thank you so much for very detailed barriers in institutional barriers and also behavioral barriers in developing the stock markets. Do you mind if we open the floor for the questions from the audience?
Yes. Dostonbek, excellent presentation. It was a pleasure meeting with you as well. So I know that we connected you with NASDAQ just to explore the opportunities for Uzbekistan to improve its financial market and also its stock exchange. What were your personal conclusions? I mean, where would you like Uzbekistan? What kind of experience by NASDAQ would you like to introduce in the Uzbek stock exchange market?
Thank you. We discussed it with Dimitri. You give his contact. He offered so impressive recommendations. Most of them I included in my policy brief. There was some recommendation on transparency and automated collection, dividend collection systems that could automatically take from enterprises their dividends and give to retail investors. And also they were ensuring creating some ATFs in NASDAQ and also developed advanced capital markets. There is ATFs. They are very popular for retail investors who doesn't know most financial reporting data. They could just invest to ATFs because they are safer and they have potential to rise in long period of time. And after enrollment policy, Dimitri said that in most advanced economies, most popular companies do that for their employees, but not in nationwide level. But I recommended to do this in nationwide level.
Thank you. Any other questions? So you have mentioned. Yeah.
Can I ask what percentage or what number of people within the entire country are invested in the stock market? Is there a number?
Yeah, of course. It is about 2.5%. It is about 1 million persons.
1 million?
Yeah, about.
Of the population of?
Yeah, 25% of all population.
So what's the next step?
You mean?
To get more people involved?
Next step, it is People's IPO. It was established by our president. It ensures wide outreach of retail investors. One huge rich man can't buy all the stocks. He will have limit. So in order to other people could buy it, and also other many efforts have been done. So, and we waiting for huge state-owned enterprises to be privatized through People's IPO in this system. So I think it will seriously increase our stock market participation. But if they implicate this my recommendations, it will be triggered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Dostonbek. I would like to ask one question. So I think you were also mentioning the third solution as a religious-wise. For people in Uzbekistan, it is very important to understand that, you know, there is no, like from this Islamic perspective, there is no riba in the percentages. Do you think would it be even possible to try to change this, like to take out the barrier in the people's minds?
Thank you for the question. As I mentioned, according to OECD survey data, they identificate that only 27% of our citizens unbanked because of religion reasons, but 30% have active credits. Moreover, by the end of 2025, retail bank deposits surged to $40 billion. It's a huge amount for retail investors. I'm going to say that religion isn't completely blocks. There is, of course, little amount of people who are concerned about religion. For this, I recommend establish Sharia complete list. They can see that it is halal actives and they may invest there. But who is fear absolutely in his mind, I don't know how can it be changed.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a question. As you mentioned, probably you haven't introduced this into your research yet because it's a new regulation. We are now securing access of the Uzbek citizens to the international stock markets, in particular the US stock market, so they can invest now in the nearest future to the American stocks. How do you think this is going to affect the overall transparency and the behavioral changes, if there are any?
We had this practice 2 years ago when our people could invest in foreign capital, but this year I talked with some brokers. They are expecting to open to foreign capital market. So it will be we will have some negative and positive impact. Mostly positive. Beginning with negative, all people like foreign capital, foreign stocks. They probably would invest more foreign companies rather than or enterprises. But there will be social proof activated. When I say that I have stock of Ford company, so around me, people will see that people can earn money from stock, and national stock market is closer than foreign. They would say, foreign capital, I don't understand, but I can start with our national capital. It will trigger our investors to invest in the Tashkent stock market exchange. I think there is also other issues, but I think it is, I said, it's most, it will have positive effect. Transparency will, of course, increase because opening to foreign capital means people will compare. Ford has all the financial reporting data in the site. Why you don't have? So it will be competitive. Good. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dostonbek. And I will also need to introduce you to local staff working on the sandbox and stock markets. Thank you so much. So, more questions. Okay, first you, gentlemen, and then you.
Roughly how much? I'm Peter Humphrey, a former diplomat and a current intelligence analyst. How much of the economy is tied to Islamic banking in rough terms? 10%, half, 90%?
It's much less than 10, even, I think.
Really?
Do you have any data?
Thank you. I don't have exact data, but...
But it could be that small.
It's very small because it's been recently introduced.
Ah.
So it wasn't the case in Uzbekistan.
Ah.
It's something foreign, so it's being introduced recently.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you for an excellent presentation. My name is Rudenshiold, and I represent Center for Global Civic and Political Strategies think tank. We're looking into like sanctions processes, sanctions evasion, and your neighbors recently fell under the sanctions of the European Union, Kyrgyzstan, heavily because of the cryptocurrency. deals. So, and definitely it will be interesting to see what kind of compliance measures Uzbekistan undertakes, in this regard, maybe not only in cryptocurrency, other sectors as well.
So yeah, as part of the government, I think you don't have enough information about that, do you?
I can.
Yeah.
I can.
Ambassador Siddiqov.
Yes.
Thank you, Ambassador Siddiqov, and I would like to tell you that we established a special commission between us and Uzbekistan. The head of Uzbek Commission on Uzbek side, Deputy Prime Minister Mr. Khajayev. We work in daily basis, sharing the information regarding the, as a responsible country, we are very strictly controlling the whole sanction policy. If you will take a look, the sanctions of United States which implemented to the region, there's less Uzbek companies. So we have very strong cooperation with the United States, and we working together with State Department, Treasury, and the others, case by case, so which are helping us to make sure that Uzbek companies will not violate the sanction policy.
So it's a living process. We're always in contact with our partners and in dialogue with them. So if they identify anything suspicious, so they can always channel this and communicate this to us, and we will immediately, online and offline, so they can immediately report this to us. The last question, I think we're running out of time. Sebastien, what do you think? Yeah, so the last question from the gentleman on the last row.
Thank you, Dostonbek, for a very informative and interesting presentation. My name is Caspian. I'm Uzbek national, but I work here for International Food Policy Research Institute. I'm a senior research fellow. So structural, institutional, behavioral factors are very important. I think there is one very simple problem related to cybersecurity and access to simple bank applications, very difficult if you are abroad. Actually, they require Uzbek phone number, and probably you already experienced that. Actually, I live here more than 20 years now, and I try to keep my bank account in Uzbekistan, but accessing to bank account in Uzbekistan is very challenging. They always ask for identification, but there are very simple solutions actually. You don't need to keep Uzbek number if you don't live permanently there. And so there are two-way authentication or some other very simple solutions which can help to solve those issues related to cybersecurity. So I think if you include that in your policy brief and policy recommendations, that will be very helpful. And I think Ambassador is here, and also Nozima, probably you may have influence to that issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will exactly add this recommendation in my policy brief. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Komronbek Utkurov, lead project finance specialist at Uzbekistan Technologies Metals Complex.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Komronbek Utkurov, and today I represent a young generation of Uzbekistan who is passionate about the reforms and future of this country. It's a huge privilege to be standing right here presenting in front of such distinguished audience. My presentation today examines how the transition from state-dominated model toward the private sector-driven economic activity has affected overall economic freedom in Uzbekistan. My main argument that Uzbekistan has made real progress in liberalization, although the expansion has not been uniform across all the dimensions. In other words, the transition is real but not yet complete. How do I switch to next? So here you can see table of contents. We just start with conceptual clarification, go on with some illustrative case studies, and finish by highlighting the structural constraints and some recommendations. Let me start with conceptual clarification. What's economic freedom? By economic freedom, I mean the ability of individuals and firms to make economic choices without excessive administrative interference. That includes freedom to hire, freedom to trade, invest, and compete under the rules that are reasonably predictable and fairly applied. So also it's important to distinguish the difference between economic freedom and pure laissez-faire, where the laissez-faire refers to minimal state interference in the economic affairs. My argument today is not that economic freedom requires total withdrawal of state. However, it needs the state in a different role as a neutral rule setter and enforcer of fair competition. This is where Friedman is especially useful. His key insight was that capitalism is necessary but not sufficient for economic freedom. In other words, state can widen choices, reduce some coercive control, but private ownership alone does not automatically create genuine free economic order. That's why I used 3 layers of reform in my presentation, which are the formal liberalization, structural transformation, and institutionalization. Economic freedom becomes durable only when liberalization is supported by structural change and credible institutions. So this brings me to Uzbek case. Since 2017, Uzbekistan has clearly pursued a broad market-oriented reforms. The role of private actors has expanded across several areas of the economy. And the key question is not whether reform has happened, it clearly has, but the other question is whether these economic decisions are becoming more decentralized, more competitive, and more rule-based. That is the distinction I want to emphasize throughout the presentation. The issue is not that states system. The issue is not whether the state is withdrawing in some formal sense, but whether the system itself becomes one in which firms and individuals can make free economic decisions under the credible rules. So one useful starting point for assessing that change is to look how Uzbekistan's economic freedom performance shifted from 2024 and 2025. If you look at the index of economic freedom of Heritage Foundation for 2025 and 2026, it can be, we can see that Uzbekistan has made measurable progress in economic liberalization. Its overall position went from 58 to 60.3, enabling the country to transition from mostly unfree to moderately free category and improve its position in world ranking up to 86. So the main driver for that was improved property rights, fiscal health, and investment freedom. So indicating enhanced openness for market mechanisms and foreign investment. However, despite these gains, there are some structural constraints in judicial effectiveness and government integrity, which are among the lowest scoring indicators here. So Uzbekistan's progress between 2025 and 2026 shows steady reform momentum, but highlights a clear imbalance. Economic and market reforms are advancing faster than institutional and legal development. So to understand this core movement, we need to look at the broader reform trajectory since 2017. Since 2017, Uzbekistan has undertaken one of the most significant reform agendas in Central Asia. The country has unified the exchange rate in September 2017, liberalized foreign exchange market, then initiated price and trade liberalization, and later implemented major tax reforms. And the results are visible in both macroeconomic performance and economic reform momentum. Asian Development Bank projects Uzbekistan's GDP growth at 6.7% in 2026 and 6.8% in 2027, after 7.7 last year, driven by foreign investment, domestic demand, and reforms. This tells us that economy is growing and the reform momentum remains real, but strong growth is not same as deep economic freedom. Growth tells us that economy is expanding. It does not automatically tell us whether economic decision making is becoming more decentralized, more competitive, and more rule-based. In parallel, Uzbekistan has launched banking and SOE reforms, took early privatization steps, and opened the market for private participants in the renewable energy sector. And also placed a greater policy emphasis on the legal predictability and competition policy. At the same time, the key analytical question is not whether reforms were announced, but whether they altered the environment in which economic actors make decisions. That is why we need to look at the next cases. So here, one of the earliest and most tangible gains in economic freedom came not from privatization, but from reducing administrative control. Before 2017, firms faced constraints in accessing foreign currency, which affected their imports, investment decisions, and operational autonomy. And after liberalization, firms gained more access to make more market-based decisions. So here, key analytical takeaway is that economic freedom can expand even before a large-scale privatization if the state reduces discretionary control over key economic choices. Second case is banking reform. Here, privatization of Ipoteka Bank has signaled the willingness and progress towards to reduce state's footprint in the banking sector. However, the broader system still remains heavily influenced by state-owned banks and the preferential lending. So the case illustrates important point that ownership change matters, but privatization contributes to economic freedom only when it changes the logic of allocation, not merely the legal status of an asset. The third case is energy reform. This case is especially useful because it shows that private sector participation depends not only on formal market opening, but on credible regulation. In sectors like energy, private investors need pricing discipline, confidence in payment structures, and reliable contracts. So here, economic freedom does not mean the absence of state, it means a shift from state control to credible market rules. The common lesson across all three cases is that economic freedom expands only when the reform reduces discretion and gives way to predictability. So this brings me to the core limitation of Uzbek reform story. Although the reform progress is real, structural constraints remain significant. The state still has large footprint in the economy, including more than 2,000 SOEs, which account for more than 42% of overall the country's GDP. And more importantly, most of these enterprises operate in sectors where private participants would do it more effectively. So why does this matter? Because when the state simultaneously becomes market participant, rule setter, and sometimes gatekeeper, private participants do not always compete on equal terms. In that sense, public ownership can distort market entry and firm expansion, even when the formal policy environment becomes more open. So the deeper issue is not whether reform has taken place, but whether private actors can actually enter, compete, expand, and invest under equal and predictable conditions. This suggests that reform progress in Uzbekistan is real, although its depth and consistency vary across sectors and institutions. So let me conclude with our main point. Uzbekistan has become more open, and that should be recognized clearly. It has reduced important administrative constraints, created more room for private initiative, and demonstrated visible reform momentum. At the same time, the strongest gains appear where reforms reduce direct discretion and increase predictability at the same time. But where ownership changes or policy shifts are not matched by stronger competition, neutral regulation, and credible enforcement, progress tends to be more limited. This leads to what I think is the key policy lesson. The next phase of Uzbekistan's reform should not be understood as simply more privatization, but should be understood as deeper institutionalization. That means stronger competition policy, more neutral regulation, lower state distortion, and more credible enforcement of rules. The deeper objective is not economic reforms as one-off transaction, but that is economic freedom as durable condition. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for very philosophical questions and work. So the floor is open to your questions. Well, what do you think? Well, institutionalization is a very tough and long process. So when I talk with business, they usually say something like, we don't need institutions, but we need some security of our investments and security of our money. So sometimes they put in opposition the institutionalized decision-making, which is more about bureaucracy, transparency of the state apparatus, based on institutions rather than sticking to one person and one person's charisma, ethical, norms, etc., etc. On the other hand, we need institutions to make these investments also long-term and to secure their safety in the long term, so that we are not sticking to one person making decisions and guaranteeing the safety of their money. Given that your work analyzes broad factors bringing to more institutionalized decision-making, what do you think, what kind of baby steps we need to take to turn this intensive reform over the past 10 years, which you don't question actually, and no one questions, into an institutionalized decision-making and institutionalized processes of making up a state and a society. Then there are practical steps.
Okay, thank you for your question. So first, we don't need to change the direction. The direction is right, but we just need to deepen it, go into each institutions to make sure that contracts are enforced and the regulation is credible and neutrally applied. But I think we're on the right path. We just need more time to that, to implement all the institutionalization. It's not like, as you told, it's not that fast process that you go through, so it'll take time. So
this also depends on the professionals.
yeah.
Mid-level, low-level, high-level, and not always high-level, because the implementation and delivery depends on the mid-level and low-level specialists, which are in charge of, bringing things and doing that work from like step by step, very tiny things, very tiny decisions every day. This is also about the human capital development, competencies, and the ability, the skills of bringing the stuff from A to B, from B to C. Very simple things from the Western mind to the Western mind, but we really lack that knowledge and experience of building the processes while you're working. So I think, yeah,
So I think that it's very well said and very well put together, and I agree. I think that institutionalization, right, it's all about the structural reform, something that is a continuous process, and you may not see the results. From the business perspective, what we're looking into is into bankable pipeline projects. And so we want to see a low-hanging fruit, and obviously when you are the companies dealing with the state, I think that our suggestion to every time we speak to young professionals is, put yourself in the shoes of the investors. Would you invest in the project that you're trying to promote, into the reforms that you're trying to promote, and how would you feel about the reforms that you're proposing to foreign investors? So I think that would be a low-hanging fruit. Kind of like identify what is the bankable in any sector, and obviously it goes into human capacity, etc. But also don't go after the grandiose plans. Just a low-hanging fruit, something that is within 2 to 3 years.
Thank you so much. Yeah, very brief. Please.
Yes, I think I can speak loudly enough. Pamela Spradlin, former ambassador of the United States to Uzbekistan. I wanted to go back to the issue of state-owned enterprises, because I think that's something that's very easy for people to understand if they're thinking about how much, to what extent has the country really produced reforms to get the state out of running businesses that, by your own assessment, could be run more efficiently if they were privatized. But you don't want to focus so much on privatization. But how do you deal in your model with the state-owned enterprises and reducing their importance in the production of the country's GDP?
So I can bring an example from banking sector that by privatizing the banking sector, and as a particular bank, and recently published presidential decree on the privatization of 15% shares of Asaka Bank, is that it indicates that the country is reducing the state's footprint in the economy, in banking sector. So these are the, like Ms. Nozima told, baby steps towards privatization and to create a more genuine free economic order. However, we need to distinguish more, like, how to say, more than privatization in those sectors. We need to do more work. We need to make a policy that is attractive for foreign investors to get in those sectors and to compete on the neutral rules.
strongly asked to finish this conversation. Maybe you can continue during the coffee break. So we need to get to the coffee break somehow. So thank you so much. Thank you
very much.
And our distinguished speaker, Eric Rudenshiold from the Caspian Policy Center. Please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. It's very hard to go after two such fabulous speakers and then our introduction by Sebastien. My presentation is going to be much higher level. Being a Washington creature who's lived in the region for a number of years, I see both perspectives. I would note there is historic interest in Central Asia from the United States government that frankly has never existed before. And Central Asia in the U.S. government at least is a very known place. We're no longer strangers. I'm not an economist, I'm a political comparativist by profession, by training. But I would note, again, this historically unique period is something that we can't underestimate. Uzbekistan is breaking with the past. Stable systems that didn't function, didn't reward innovation, now are being broken apart. And I think this is a particularly consequential moment for Uzbekistan and for Central Asia as a whole. The region is no longer defined simply by geography, but it's increasingly defined by strategic choice. These choices are being reshaped by shifting trade routes, by geopolitical disruption, and a gradual, though still incomplete, opening of the economic space that we've been hearing about. And at the center of this shift, in my opinion, is connectivity. It is a driver of change. And for decades, Uzbekistan's economic structure was constrained by inherited dependence, Soviet infrastructure, on northbound trade routes, and on a system in which political and economic gravity flowed towards Russia. That legacy has not disappeared, but it is no longer absolute. And the emergence of the Trans-Caspian or Middle Corridor is changing that equation significantly. This route links Central Asia across the Caspian Sea through the South Caucasus to Europe. It offers something Uzbekistan has historically lacked: diversification, options. It reduces reliance on any single transit partner and creates a pathway to global markets that neither runs through Russia nor relies on southern routes constrained by Iran or war-torn Afghanistan. And this matters because connectivity is not just about trade or moving goods. It is about economic sovereignty. Recent geopolitical developments have accelerated this shift. Western sanctions on Russia following its second invasion of Ukraine have disrupted traditional transit routes and limited their reliability. And as a result, trade and investment are beginning to reorient. These sanctions were not designed to benefit Central Asia, but in practice, they have created space for countries like Uzbekistan to pursue and to pursue more independent economic strategies, to diversify its partnerships, and to reduce its structural dependence on any single external power. The question is, and I think we've been hearing about this already, is whether Uzbekistan is positioned to take full advantage of that opportunity. And at present, I would say the answer is mixed. Uzbekistan has undertaken meaningful reforms in recent years. It has liberalized its currency, simplified aspects of taxation, and it's made efforts to improve the climate for investment. These steps have signaled a willingness to move toward a more open and market-oriented system, but structural constraints remain significant. State involvement in major sectors continues to distort competition. Regulatory frameworks are not always applied consistently. Businesses still face uncertainty in areas such as licensing, dispute resolution, and contract enforcement. These areas have improved, but more needs to be done. They are not peripheral concerns. They go to the core of whether economic freedom is real or merely aspirational. A country cannot fully benefit from new trade corridors if its domestic economic system discourages investments, limits competition, or introduces uncertainty at every stage of doing business. And I think we've heard some excellent comments about how this can move forward. Connectivity without reform risks turning Uzbekistan into a transit zone rather than a value-creating economy. It is on that edge. And without stronger institutions, I'm actually talking about stronger institutions in a place that has strong institutions, but improved rule of law, more predictable governance, Uzbekistan risks limiting the benefits of its new connectivity. It may become better connected, but not fundamentally more competitive. These are not marginal issues. As Uzbekistan expands its economic relationships, it will engage a wider range of partners, including regional powers and global investors. This brings opportunity, but also exposure. Without careful policy choices, new dependencies can emerge in the form of concentrated trade relationships, uneven investment terms, or external influence over critical infrastructure. Connectivity alone does not guarantee autonomy. It must be matched by internal capacity. And I think this brings the role of the United States to the fore. The United States has supported Uzbekistan's reform efforts through technical assistance, private sector engagement, and dialogue on economic policy. And these efforts have contributed to incremental improvements in transparency, financial systems, and entrepreneurship. But the scale and focus of engagement now need to evolve. If this moment is as strategically important as it appears, then U.S. policy needs to reflect that more directly. First, I think there needs to be stronger emphasis on institutions. Economic freedom depends on, not on announcements, but on implementation, on courts that function, on predictability and rules that apply consistently. And supporting these foundations is less visible than infrastructure projects. But ultimately, I think it's much more decisive. We have made huge progress in Uzbekistan in many of these areas, but so much more needs to be done to build this market economy. And second, the United States, I believe, should engage more concretely in the development of connectivity itself. Trade corridors do not become viable simply because they exist on a map. They require investment, coordination, and standards. Targeted support in logistics, customs modernization, and trade facilitation can help ensure that these new routes are efficient and commercially sustainable. Infrastructure, logistics, and trade facilitation are not peripheral issues. They are central to whether Uzbekistan can translate geographic opportunity into economic reality. Third, I would say greater private sector involvement is essential. American companies bring more than capital. They bring expectations on governance, on transparency, and on operational integrity. And encouraging their participation in Uzbekistan's market can reinforce reform in ways that policy dialogue alone cannot. But investment requires more than MOUs. Contracts require trust, partnership, and assumed risk. There is still too large a gap between MOUs and contracts signed. And I think our other speakers have kind of touched on that a little bit. And fourth, finally, support for small and medium-sized enterprises should remain central. Large-scale economic projects may define regional connectivity, but SMEs determine whether economic opportunity is broad-based or narrowly concentrated. Expanding access to finance, improving business services, and reducing administrative burdens can help ensure that growth translates into genuine economic freedom. Again, many reforms have been introduced, but actually getting broad-based implementation, and I think our speakers have mentioned to this, that kind of adoption has to be a priority across the country. Finally, U.S. engagement will remain clear-eyed. Uzbekistan is navigating a complex environment. It is balancing reform with stability, diversification with risk, openness with control, Progress is not always linear. Some reforms will stall. Others may be unevenly applied. But the goal should not be to assume success, but to reinforce direction, to support policies and institutions that make long-term economic freedom more likely. And in that sense, this is both a moment of opportunity and a test of execution. Uzbekistan has more options today than at any other point in its recent history. New trade corridors, shifting geopolitical dynamics, and evolving partnerships have created space for greater economic independence. The combination of new connectivity routes and shifting geopolitical constraints has created space that did not exist even 5 years ago. But opportunity does not guarantee outcome. Without deeper domestic reform, stronger institutions, and disciplined economic policy, Uzbekistan risks falling short, remaining connected but not fully competitive, more open but not fully free. The United States, working with partners, can help ensure that this moment leads to durable progress, not by overstating achievements, but by addressing constraints, not by assuming momentum, but by sustaining it. Because in the end, economic freedom is not built by geography or corridors alone. It is built by rules, institutions, and by the consistent ability of individuals and businesses to operate with confidence. And Uzbekistan now, as I say, has more options than any point in its modern history. The young generation that you see here today is a different generation that is moving into power, into government, into business. They are more worldly than their parents, they are more exposed, they have a different view of the future and what their country can hold. This country now faces a defining choice, whether to translate new opportunities into lasting economic sovereignty. This is a transitional economy of both a government and a population. What it does with those options will define its future, and that outcome is not guaranteed, but I believe it's within reach. Thank you.
Mr. Rudenshiold, we can't agree more, given that we are witnessing unprecedentedly elevated relationship with the United States. We all need to use it wisely. And questions? Yeah, that lady.
There is so much PR of Uzbekistan, but in reality it's a highly authoritarian, barbarian country, and I wonder how much they pay to host this event here. Let's talk about human rights. Let's talk about Karakalpakstan. What's happening there? Can you talk about current policies that are genocidal policies against minority indigenous people Karakalpak?
Well, I think this is highly irrelevant and also insulting to say words that you have mentioned, and this is super irrelevant to the topic of today's event.
But it's all PR, all lies. Why don't we be transparent and speak about the issues that the country has?
Okay, we have been listening to younger generations with their research topics on the issues that they have selected and important to them, because this is also important for the whole country. So we can go to the next question. Yes, please.
So this is kind of, oh, sorry.
So go ahead.
This kind of related, Malcolm Russell Einhorn. Sorry. Malcolm Russell Einhorn, I'm here at the Elliott School. This kind of relates to both of the last speakers, and they were both stressing the importance of institutionalization and capacity building. There's a moment now when the U.S., has abandoned a lot of the exchange of expertise, at least at the government level or the NGO level. So one question would be, how can that be replaced or substituted even in the next few years? But more important, the target of that, I think there's a question about the state and its cadres and whether they are prepared for this moment. And I'm wondering, what is being done to either improve public administration training, recruitment, because the younger generation, many of them want state employment and the security that brings. What kind of recruitment incentives can be done to bring the right people in to create a new generation of thinking? And finally, can there be a competition engendered within the public administration? Because one of the best incentives is peer-to-peer learning and competitiveness. So if one or two ministries or agencies are showing the kind of new thinking and innovation that one would want to see, how can that have a ripple effect throughout the administration?
Thanks so much. I think I'm the right person to answer this question because I'm in charge of human capital development at the presidential administration, and I've been appointed to this because we care a lot about the young professionals and young staff, especially in the government. So I am that example that came out of nowhere to work for the government. I've never even imagined that I would have been working for the government in my life because I came from the civil society. I was highly critical about the government, and during the Peyrouse era and also in the new era, I've been writing very critical articles about the government and in the spheres like education, journalism, the protection of media freedoms, and also gender policy. And here, by the way, 7 years ago, I wrote about the women empowerment in general. And I also wrote about the necessity of criminalization of domestic violence. And one of my professors, at that time, he told me, like, are you going to arrest every man in Uzbekistan because the level of violence is so high? Just for your information, before 2016 and 17, even the word of gender and women empowerment was criminalized. And no one would like to talk about these topics. And when I wrote this research paper here, I was invited to work for the government on women empowerment. And I was a part of the working group which finally criminalized domestic violence in Uzbekistan. And we were the first country to criminalize domestic violence in our region. So coming back to human capital development, it's really a difficult process, and Uzbekistan is investing a lot in younger generations of professionals. And one of these kind of investments are the Foundation, which invests like millions of dollars for education abroad. And I was also part of this program but before becoming a government official. And my studies at Oxford University were also financed by the government. There are hundreds of people that are accepted to the top-ranking universities, world universities, and they are paid for their studies and for their living abroad. And we welcome them to come back and work for the government. And there is a very comprehensive policy of how to integrate those people into the government work, because this is really challenging. The older generations are not very eager to accept them and to learn from them and maybe to teach them something from their own experience. This is all very, human factors, sometimes very psychological factors that hinder people from accepting something new, and the government work is also part of it. And we're now building a system where younger generations can integrate and get adapted into the ministries and agencies, and actually all the advanced ministries and agencies are very much welcomed in Uzbekistan, and there are also ratings and rankings and competitions among them as well. The other dimension is the coordination between and among all these ministries and agencies, and this is more challenging because, again, this is a human factor. They can be jealous about each other, and this is not normal, but this is very common among us human beings. There are the challenges that I think every country, every society, especially intensively developing societies and communities are facing. They are the same in Uzbekistan, maybe with some nuances, but we're working on them, and this is a process. Thank you. Yeah, maybe you have also from your experience.
Yeah, thank you. I have at some points. I live in Sirdarya region, Hovas district, and Korakum village. It is small village in Sirdarya, and I had many opportunities to work for the government. I had chance, but I chosen the research. So I think government have done very huge efforts to young generation could work anywhere they want. My friends from Korakum village works in ministry, works in administration. So I think it's there is huge progress in this case. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah. I don't think I need mic. I see mic.
Yeah. Please for the recording.
Yeah, my question is from the Caspian Policy Center. You mentioned it in when you were giving a speech. You mentioned a lot of things about dispute resolution, court systems, rule of law. So I was an attorney back in Uzbekistan. I'm an attorney here as well, and represented a lot of clients here and then back home. So one of the priorities of Uzbekistan right now is also rule of law, independence of courts. But as you mentioned, there are still issues with a lot of the systems. And what do you see the solutions here? Do you think more reforms on the independence of courts, or we should look at other dispute resolution methods, maybe arbitration, mediation, or anything like that?
It's a great question. I go back a few years working with USAID, where we actually worked on programs which opened the courts up and facilitated more open court processes. I think that pathway has been opened and is continuing. We're seeing more public access to information, selection of judges, much more impartial. I mean, a lot's really evolved in that system in a very positive way. But I think, I think as we see generations of Uzbeks coming from exposure outside, it brings a lot of pressure in the Ministry of Justice itself to evolve and to change. And I think you have a leadership in the country that is not at all afraid of adopting major reforms that bring change. And that's something that's really quite different than where we come from. And so I think the biggest challenge, I can't go back a few years, but I remember working with parliaments that would pass a law and then going over and talking to the judges, the Ministry of Justice, and they don't have access to the law. I mean, we've come from that kind of system that really had a long, long way to go. Much ground has been traveled at this point, but I do see real pressures being brought inside the system to change, and there is a lot more exposure to, as you say, alternative dispute mechanisms and those kinds of evolutionary processes. And I'm really encouraged in discussions with ministries that the government is very open to adopting that. But I think the point made earlier over here about the people at the mid-level and the lower level, they're the ones that really have to implement all of this. And they're the ones that need that kind of civil service education. But we'll see how long it takes to actually bring them along as well.
And then I would like to add that to support business investor in Uzbekistan, from this year we implemented in all IT parks and free trade economic zone British law.
Oh, I see. So
that is
common
unique.
law.
Yes. So we are doing all the best to support the business.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm also once again asked to wrap up and set up the room for the next panel. Thank you so much, everyone. I think that's been a really productive conversation. And you can continue during the coffee break, and please feel free to do this. Thank you so much for being here.